walking virtually along the world's most revered footpaths and connecting the global community of pilgrims. It's the Sacred Steps Podcast. Available on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Broadcasting from the Shea Mare Studios in Florida. Here's your host, pilgrim backpacker and author, Kevin Donahue.
Buen Camino, pilgrims, and welcome back to the Sacred Steps Podcast. I'm Kevin Donahue, pilgrim, backpacker, and author of Sacred Steps, a pilgrimage journal. On today's episode, we're walking virtually alongside the Warriors on the Way organization. I had a fantastic interview with Father Steve, Dr. Renee, Jim, and Sergeant Espinosa about their most recent Camino, shared with veterans who are fighting PTSD through walks on the Camino de Santiago. But before we begin, I want to say a nice welcome back to all of our VIP members. I truly enjoyed connecting with you on a one-on-one basis, doing some video calls, talking about your upcoming Caminos, and helping to prepare your packing list. So if you're interested in joining our VIP member list, you can find more details on the website at sacredstepspodcast.com, where you'll also find our email list. If you're not subscribed today to our email list, please pop over to the website and join us. I most recently shared some details about my upcoming pilgrimage walk on the Via Francigena, which will start in May, continuing on through Italy to Rome. I can't wait to share the details about that in our season finale podcast, as well as some insights that I gained personally during my London to Canterbury pilgrimage along England's Pilgrim's Way, carrying the prayers of others. Just thinking about it kind of gets me choked up a bit. But I am looking forward to sharing more about that with you. I would also say there is a prayer request link on the website. So if there's something on your heart, something on your mind that I can shoulder for you and carry along my way to Italy, please do send it. Thank you for those who have already sent your prayer request. I've tried to respond to all of you personally to let you know when and where I'll be praying for you, your loved ones, and your family. But I ask you to also please keep me in your thoughts as I make this solo pilgrimage across Italy to meet my family at the Vatican. Okay, let's get right into today's episode with the Warriors on the Way organization, an American 501c3 charity that provides all the expenses for veterans to walk the Camino de Santiago throughout the course of their journey, providing spiritual consultation and psychological consultation. Father Steve is with us, as well as Dr. Renee, Jim Stinson, and Army Sergeant Chris Espinosa. Together, we'll be talking about their most recent Camino, as well as some insights on what the organization provides for soldiers who may be battling PTSD. I realize for many veterans, conversations around PTSD and veteran suicide can bring forth very strong emotions. Down below in the show notes, you'll find links to organizations that can help you right now, including phone numbers for someone that you can speak with if our conversation today prompts that call. After 31 years of service in the U.S. Army, Father Steve Rendall walked the Camino de Santiago and found the experience spiritually and psychologically fulfilling. He returned home to found an organization that would give the gift of healing along the Camino de Santiago to service men and women. Warriors on the Way is our focus on today's episode of the Sacred Steps Podcast. Father Steve Rendall, welcome to the Sacred Steps Podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here today.
Really excited to talk about your organization, Warriors on the Way. We had the opportunity last season to talk to Brad Genero, who is in a similar organization, Veterans on the Camino, and I am just so touched by the work that your organization does. I've been following your social media, looking at the website. Father Steve, I've got to know your background because this amount of brotherhood and giving comes from a special place. how did you get involved in wanting to start this organization?
Okay, great question. Appreciate it. It really boils down to I had learned about the Camino somewhere in the neighborhood of 2009, 2010, and had wanted to walk the Camino myself. I was in the Army at the time, and to walk the Camino takes a lot of leave that I didn't have. Didn't have the opportunity to walk while I was in the Army. And so when it came up time for my retirement, I kind of looked at the future, didn't know quite how I was going to make that Army to civilian life transition. I'd been in the Army at that point for a total combination of 31 years, and thought to just get up and not put a uniform on was not a good transition plan. You know, it might be a transition, but it's not a plan. So I thought, well, here's my opportunity. I've been wanting to walk the Camino now for quite a few years, and I'll do it now. And that will give me the opportunity to just be away from distractions and think and pray and try to discern a way forward. And so the last thing I did in the Army was work as an instructor and curriculum developer for the chaplaincy. I was a chaplain in the Army, and I developed the Army Chaplain Corps course on how to provide a ministerial response to PTSD and moral injury. And so that was fresh on my mind as I started my Camino. And as I walked, I realized just how healing the Camino was. A few key events along the way really being anchor points to that. And as I completed the Camino, I realized that other veterans needed to have at least the opportunity to have the same experience I had had. And so just kind of sketched it out in my mind a little bit. Well, if we're going to do this, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
And when I got back home, just started putting it together, put pencil to paper. Took a year to get the IRS pit done, and then another year to actually get up and running, or up and walking, I guess would be better saying. And we were on the Camino, and we've been going every year since, except for 2020, when the
Yes.
whole world shut down.
So that first Camino, Warriors on the Way, when did that take place? What year?
That was September 2018.
I want to ask you, it's a delicate topic, I understand, but you said right away you realized that this was sort of a healing type walk for veterans. Is it just the space? Is it the emotion? Is it the camaraderie? What is the healing portion that you saw right away?
Okay, the answer is yes. There's a lot of components that go into helping reduce PTSD symptoms. Things really simple. Go outside into a calm space. So just being outside, not if cars are buzzing around you and it's some kind of crazy urban cacophony, but as long as you're in a relatively peaceful space outside, your symptoms will go down. Controlled physical stress, also known as exercise, will help your symptoms go down. Being involved in an activity with people who have same or similar experiences will help your symptoms go down. Being involved in positive spiritual practices will help your symptoms go down. And so the Camino is this amazing and unique location that allows for all of those to be blended together. And except for intentionally bringing together a group of veterans, which we do as an organization, all of them are just built in. And then we add to it the intentionality of bringing a group together, going through all the applications that come in through the year, and saying, okay, these people are going to gel, or to the best we can discern from the applications anyway.
Sure.
And putting them together in a single group and bringing them to Spain and starting to walk.
Steve, I'm just blown away. So Warriors on the Way is providing basically the totality of travel, transport, equipment. That's got to be an incredibly expensive undertaking.
Don't do the boots part. You gotta have your own boots when you get here. But yes, the rucksack, sleeping bag, trekking poles, canteen, budget wise of $3,750 per person, $3,750 per person, and that has, like I said, kept us pretty safe as far as our budgeting estimates. It keeps us within close enough to have to not worry about if there's a fluctuation in rate of exchange or airfare, which, last year was pretty good for the airfare, but the rate of exchange wasn't all that great. Previous year, the airfare killed us, but the rate of exchange was good. So if we use the 3750 as our working number, we come in safe as the other pieces fluctuate.
Father Steve Rendall is our guest on the Sacred Steps podcast. We're talking with the team from Warriors on the Way, a 501c3 organization founded in the United States. If you're interested in their mission, please see the show notes below. And I'm going to include a contribution link as well, because I know there are people who are passionate about providing opportunities for our servicemen and women and the difference the Camino de Santiago can make in the lives of those who may be suffering with PTSD or seeking the camaraderie they once had during their service years. So please check the show notes below for more information on Warriors on the Way.
Are you planning a walking pilgrimage? Share the details of your journey as a voice message with our podcast audience. Visit sacredstepspodcast.com to record your voice message for a future broadcast. Know someone considering pilgrimage? Share this episode as a text from your device and help others find the podcast by leaving a star rating on your podcast app. And now, the Sacred Steps podcast continues.
Father Steve, you mentioned that this is an organization. Just like the military, it takes infrastructure to make it move. On your team is another lady that I want to introduce, Dr. Renee Phillips. And we'll bring Renee onto the show here. Renee, thanks for joining us on the Sacred Steps podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear how the two of you got connected. Renee, how you became involved in the organization as well, and maybe some insights on what the structure is as you're starting to plan Caminos for these guests.
Sure. So I met Father Steve. My sister is a clinical psychologist who works in the military, and she went on the first iteration of the Camino in 2018. And she was unable to go on the next Camino. And I had I was having a job change and was in the middle of kind of changing things in my life, and got a phone call and basically said, "Are you interested in going on the Camino? I'd like to connect you with Father Steve. He can tell you about it and tell you what the mission is." And so I spoke with him, and I immediately wanted to be a part of the organization. I believed in the mission. I believed in the purpose, and I'd heard about the Camino probably in graduate school about 20 years ago, and it had been on my bucket list. And so I personally wanted to do that trip, and then to do it in such a professionally meaningful way was something that I was just very excited about. So 2019 was my first Camino. Yeah.
You mentioned...
and then... Go ahead.
Sorry. You mentioned it's been professionally rewarding and personally rewarding. I'm really curious about that. I find that so interesting. The professionally rewarding side. Can you give us a little insight?
Sure. So, I love what I do. I help people. That is my role as a psychologist, and so that provides me with a lot of. It's just personally fulfilling. And so when I get to help, especially veterans along that way, it just brings me a lot of meaning and purpose. And then to see the good things that transpire, and to see really the positive benefits that they get as their Camino unfolds in their personal journey. So.
I never served in the military. Many members of my family did, but I have to imagine that as these servicemen and women are coming together, not knowing one another, but with shared backgrounds and common interests, that you get sort of a family or platoon type spirit rather quickly among all of the pilgrims.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a camaraderie. There's a shared understanding. There's shared experiences, and I think that including me as a civilian, can't relate to. And so to have that with one another, I think is part of the healing process that they gain.
Father Steve, how many, and maybe you can't quantify this, but are the servicemen and women, the veterans who are walking with you on the way, are they come from all faiths and all backgrounds, or does it tend to be, a rather skewed Catholic group, or what's the makeup?
No, it is open. It's open to people regardless of what their faith background is, and we have a pretty good distribution across the spectrum as far as the participants. The part of the application process is statements of understanding, just describing, this is what we're doing, and this is where we're going to be, and when we're going to be, and this is what we expect of you, and that. And part of that is explaining there is a faith component, and you'll either participate or basically respectfully just wait for that component to be complete. And as we continue each morning we start, we start out with the time of faith. We celebrate the Mass and have a message on healing. So whether or not you're going to participate in the Eucharist or not, I want everybody to hear that message on healing, so that it'll be something that they can think about and consider through the day. But other than that, the actual participation, that's left to each person. If you want to be fully engaged, be fully engaged. If you otherwise, be present, listen, and allow the rest to go on around you until we're ready to grab rucks and start walking.
Renee, how much does the camaraderie play into the healing process for veterans who are walking together with shared experiences or at least common perspectives?
I think quite a bit, because the shared experiences and the shared perspectives allow them to more easily share with one another, and I think be vulnerable in a way that they might not be able to with other people. And I think that the Camino itself lends to a sense of vulnerability too, kind of like nothing else. But I think it's an important aspect for sure of the group. There's just a shared, sense of community and respect, and everybody has each other's backs, and we know it.
Now, speaking of community, we're lucky enough to have another one of our Warriors on the Way team members joining us this afternoon, Jim Stenson. I want to get some perspective as we talk about the actual process of walking the Camino, because there, as Father Steve said, there is an opportunity for faith and fellowship. There is an opportunity, as Dr. Renee said, for camaraderie and shared healing. Jim, the Camino has a few places along the way where there's also an opportunity for a little bit of fun along the way. You see these veterans, and you've walked alongside them. How does that come together for people who may not have shared backgrounds? I mean, we're not taking one of those trips where there's a flag and everybody follows a guided tour, right?
That's a great question, because they've all gone through, boot camp, which is a very serious and very stressful training period. Then they go into their specialty training, which is also pushing the limits on physical and mental boundaries. And then when you get into your unit and you find yourself in a war zone, there's not a lot of fun in that either. It's very, very stressful, very emotional. And so you find that going on the Camino, especially trying to keep up with Father Steve, it also reintroduces, some stress. You've got to pack on. It's hot. You had to start the day with Mass, and deep contemplation and prayer. So it's going to be and it's a long day, 6-7 hours of hiking with a pack on your back. So what's the fun in that? Uh, well, you got to kind of try to inject some fun into everything, and
Yeah.
with the camaraderie and the shared experiences of veterans, that's what you do is you find the fun things. What what can I make fun of the guy beside me so that we can, if what we're doing isn't fun, at least we can invent a little bit of fun. So the camaraderie between people, the shared misery, misery loves company is the saying, and that creates a bond, and that creates an enjoyment out of what would normally be, a somewhat unpleasant experience. And as the veterans are hiking along throughout the day, and you look at some of the tired, hot, sweaty, starving to death civilians who are not really enjoying this as much as we are as veterans, because we've experienced this most of our life. There's that also helps bring us together, is that bit of enjoyment that we're accomplishing something together, we're doing something together, and we can joke and laugh and poke fun of each other and with ourselves, and lighten the mood and lighten the day.
Servicemen and women have been through a lot, especially American servicemen and women in the last 30 years or more. A lot of tours, and seen a lot of things that stay with you for a very long time, unfortunately. And we mentioned just a little about PTSD, but I'm wondering, for those servicemen and women who go through moments when they're with their brothers on the Camino, their brothers in arms, is it the organization that steps in to help lift them up, or is it the other servicemen and women that are there alongside them?
I think it's a little really. It's both. Yeah. Father Steve, I can pass this over to him, but he's created the structure so that it can be a self-uplifting type of event. Military members were organized into teams and into squads, and that's how you function and that's how you survive. And so you got the guy on the left, guy in the back, who's watching your back. So it automatically, just intuitively, falls to leaning on each other for things that you need. And Father Steve has put this together such that can occur. And it just happens. The first few days, everybody's getting to know each other and they're a little standoffish. And I'm not sure I want to say anything yet. But after a couple of days, everybody starts to come together and start to meld and become a team. And then they openly share. And the structure that Father Steve has created, and the presence of Father Steve, as the spiritual mentor, and Doc Phillips there being, the doc, then that structure is there to spur that along or support that and to back up what naturally occurs.
And I'll say, you've walked the community, you're familiar with it. There are certain things that we do together each day. Each day we start with the celebration of the Mass. We eat breakfast. We do that together. We eat breakfast together. We eat our snack period together, the meals together. And other than that, it's a more fluid day. We want to stay reasonably close to within line of sight of each other so that nobody gets misdirected, or at least minimize the chance. But as our team stretches out a little bit, I may be walking with somebody for a while, and two other people are walking together, and Dr. Phillips is walking with somebody, Jim's walking with somebody, and then as the day progresses or into the next day, those pairings, they're not locked in place. They'll break apart, shift, recombinate, and so who is going to address the questions that you have or provide the sympathetic ear to the issue that you want to talk about? It's up to that individual who wants to talk to make that choice. They'll walk up next to me, or they'll walk up next to Dr. Phillips, or next to Jim, or one of the other vets that's on the trip, and start that conversation. And so by by making sure that the structure is in place, as Jim mentioned, and then at the same time allowing it to be fluid enough that people can find where they fit within the structure has yielded some great results.
Our guests today are members of Warriors on the Way organization. We're speaking in detail about the benefit that servicemen and women receive from walking the Camino de Santiago. Warriors on the Way provides the entirety of the lift for servicemen and women who want to make a Camino Frances walk, from the transportation, your ruck, everything you need, your meals and lodging along the way. They are a 501c3 in the United States, and the donation link, if you're moved by their story, is down below in our show notes. Now, team, our last walk was fall 2021. I understand that you had Army Sergeant Chris Espinoza on your walk. I want to bring in Chris to the show to join us and talk a little bit about his experience walking the Camino with the Warriors on the Way organization. Hey, Chris, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me online.
So, your experience, active duty, Army, combat medic. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you're doing. Tell us what walking the Camino with Warriors on the Way was like for you.
Oh man, it was a great blessing in disguise. I didn't know anything about it until Father Rendall came to our VFW post, and he was elected as our chaplain there, and he approached me discussing the Warriors on the Way program. I had talked to him briefly in passing about PTSD and things that I struggle with, just there at the post level. And he says, I have this organization. I think it would greatly benefit you in dealing with whatever you're going through. As a veteran, I joined when I was 17 years old, right when 9/11 had happened. I was still in high school, and I just knew it was my sense of duty to join the military. I was in ROTC for 4 years, and then made that choice. Right after high school, went to training, shipped out in 2003 to Iraq, 2005-06 in Afghanistan, and again in 08-09 Afghanistan again. In that time, it really did take a toll on me, just being on the ground, seeing everything that happens there. And, to participate in something like Warriors on the Way, the Camino, it really grounds you and puts you in the moment of what life could be and how it's more beautiful than the image you still have stuck in your head. And, with the uplifting messages every morning, with the camaraderie that you share with the person to your left and right, we all have shared combat backgrounds. So something traumatic happened to all of us at one point. And might not be the same thing, but we know then that we're not alone, and we can rely on each other on how to, defeat our common enemy, which is mostly ourselves in our own head.
Yeah, great point. You mentioned the VFW. We'll link that great organization as well as the VA, some websites down below where if you're wanting the opportunity to talk to someone today, or you're worried about a brother or sister who you think needs a call, we'll link some resources down below in the show notes so we can make sure that everyone has a brother looking out for them every day. Sergeant, you've seen things that I couldn't even imagine as a civilian in your tours of duty, but you've always been called upon to be calm under pressure, right? Doing your role, trying to give comfort to others.
Yes, during training they stress us out to the point to where we really don't think, we react, and it's under the most strenuous conditions. That if you have to stick an IV, if you have to do a tourniquet on something, you just do it and then think about it later. And then when you think about it later is when it gets you.
So what's it like when you are walking day after day with your new unit, if you will, on the Camino, and there's none of that tour that's happening. Nobody's hopefully needing an IV. Nobody's taking cover. What's that day to day like?
It's rough. We we're starting out new. It's still fresh. It's like, Jim, Doc Renee, and Father Rendell said, we're all filling each other out. We're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with them, and then what's going on with me. You're just acclimating to your surroundings, and then you'll get comfortable once, your legs start getting tired. You start talking to each other, trying to keep your mind off of it. And then you just start taking in the scenery. You start opening up. You start hearing other people's backgrounds, and you're like, wow, maybe they didn't have as good as me or bad as me, good as me. It doesn't matter. I mean, everybody's experiences are different. And, it's just a relief. It's a great big relief to see how beautiful that country is, how amazing the walk is. And, just, again, it's like, I'm not going to say being on patrol because there's no danger. It's just enjoying a nice stroll and talking to you. But
something to be said for that. Let me ask you, because you said you weren't really familiar with the Camino de Santiago, and I can remember when I first learned about it, it was kind of this experience that was sort of a cultural thing that I wasn't very familiar with either. Were there parts of the Camino that stood out for you or stand out for you as you reflect back on your walks?
Just seeing all the cathedrals. I mean, I was born and raised Catholic, going in and, I hadn't been practicing for a while, but I came back to my faith on the Camino, just going into the chapels, lighting candles, praying every morning, talking with the Father, confessing sins, just doing everything as a, I would say good Christian person, just getting back to that. And, that really fills my heart with everything that it's been missing.
Father Steve, when you hear Sergeant Espinosa relate his experiences, I mean, this is the mission, right?
Yes, absolutely. As is done in the military, you form that tight bond. Walking the community together forms a tight bond, and you continue to hear from people who've walked previously the misery of walking with a rucksack for 15 miles or 18 miles on a long day that Jim mentioned is a good thing, because if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, and we want to change you for the better.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about with a number of our guests, and I really found on a lot of my pilgrimage walks, and Dr. Renee, I'd love to hear your insights on this, but when the body is exhausted, it creates this great mental and emotional space where everything is kind of quiet in the mind, and you're just able to relax and be in that moment. And I'm wondering if you find that to be rather common with your group, because they're very experienced in most instances on doing PT, doing tours, other actions that would have them in this physical space. So does the physicality lend itself, or is it something that the groups are mostly familiar with?
I think that sometimes people are familiar with it, but in the past, and we all train for the Camino, but it is still grueling. Some days in particular, and it does. I think it does lend itself to healing. I think when people are physically exhausted, then those defenses start to come down, and they become more vulnerable, and then they're more willing to share. And that's why I love the Camino. When you combine spirituality, religion, with the emotional part and the physical part, bringing all those things together, I think. Lends itself to healing at a much faster pace. There's really nothing like the Camino, to be honest.
There are places along the walk where, either because of their innate beauty, because of the spirituality of the location, because of the number of days you've been walking, tend to be more meaningful for pilgrims than others. What about your groups? Do you find that there are places along the Camino where warriors on the way, veterans tend to find more meaning or insight?
We start just outside of Astorga, so that we can, which fortunately, a nice providential twist, is about 180 miles away from Santiago. So we're encouraging people to do a 180 in their life in 180. And so, but to try to maximize the opportunity for arriving at Cruz de Ferro, which happens just within a couple days because of starting in Astorga, get people to put out a message a few weeks prior to leaving that you should pick up a rock that is going to be small enough that you'll carry it every day and large enough to be annoying when you do, so that it really does become emblematic of a burden you want to let go of and put on and leave there at the foot of the cross when we arrive at Crucifero. We make a point of getting up, stopping just short of the Crucifero, and then getting up early and walking up so we're there just as the twilight is starting to illuminate the cross, and celebrate the Mass, allow people to share if they want to. Nobody's forced to, but allow people the opportunity to share the burden that they're wanting to leave there and not pick up again. And so we get a lot of positive feedback on that experience.
Yeah.
And then the other that's gets a lot of positive feedback because of just the sheer exertion is the going up to Osabrero. We go up to Osabrero first thing in the morning as well, so that we can be there when the church there opens. And well, that's a steep incline, and it's a lot of work. It's 6 miles of length, but I think you only move forward maybe a mile if you're looking at it in the map, because it's all, at least feels straight up. The elevation profile is daunting. And so again, it's one of those, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. That's a challenging day. And so that is a pretty standout memory for most of our pilgrims. And then, of course, arriving in Santiago and getting there and realizing what a great accomplishment you've achieved.
Yeah, everyone loves Father Steve as the team leader on Osabrero Day. Let's get up. Let's go up a mountain. Great. Can't wait. Let's roll. Jim, what's it like to see the Camino not only through your eyes, having done it before, but through the eyes of others as they're making their first trip like this?
Oh, that's multifaceted because there's so many sets of eyes. But I tell you, having stood back and walked with everybody and watching the evolution as the days go, as people open up and they start to change and to loosen up, it really is a fascinating insight on how people work, and at the beginning, I have no idea of what their backgrounds are and what their source of their PTSD or their moral injury is. So I'm kind of in the dark of everybody's story. So I'm kind of coming along, listening, not prodding, because nobody wants to be needled all the time. Hey, tell me your story, but just listening. And as you see people go from that standoffishness of, like I said, who's that guy? Where's he from? I don't want to be vulnerable or share around them, to opening up and really, in some cases, bearing your soul, as to something deep that I didn't even share with my mom, when I came back from the war, to see them and listen to them share with each other. And then the looks on their faces evolve, as the week goes by. They lighten up. Their spirits become lighter. They feel more in a safe place, or more comfortable. And so to watch that, and I don't have the Doc's background or Father Steve's background as a chaplain, so I'm just watching it as a prior military leader, and as a person who cares about the people around me. But to see those people evolve and to loosen up and to feel safe and to just become themselves again really is amazing. And it's a sense of reward for me to know that I don't know that I caused that, but I was there when it happened. And that is just so neat to go to see the change in that person's life and to know that they're going to go home a different person and with a brighter future.
Dr. Renee Phillips, what does that transformation look like as veterans arrive in Santiago de Compostela?
I mean, it's neat to see the progression, just as it unfolds day to day. And then I think by the time we're in Santiago, I mean, everybody's reaction to to arriving in Santiago, are a little different. But everybody's excited. They're ready to be there. And from a psychological perspective, what we see is a reduction in symptoms, PTSD symptoms. So what I really notice is that they talk about how they sleep so much better, that they're less irritable, that they don't feel as tense. Those are the things that really come out. And one of the things that we do is give our vets at the beginning and then midway through and then at the end a questionnaire. It's a empirically validated measure that looks at PTSD symptoms. It's a screening tool. So they take that at the very beginning and then in the middle and at the end. And we've seen over 3 iterations that there's a reduction of about 70% in PTSD symptoms. So you have the objective evidence there, and then you subjectively see it as well. They report it to you. You see it just like Jim said. You see it in and even in their gait, like how they're talking, how they're just the perception of the world, how they talk about themselves, and just looking at the world differently. It's a pretty amazing process.
Sergeant Espinosa, you said you had grew up in the church, fell out with your faith, and then on the Camino, going to Mass, being with Father Steve. What is walking into Santiago de Compostela and seeing the tomb of St. James like as somebody who grew up in the church?
Wow. It's very unreal. It's very surreal. It's like, wow, part of I'm here in living history, I guess you can say. It's just something that, I was taken aback. I didn't know how to react. I was just like, is this real? This is real? Okay, it's real.
Yeah.
And it was just very exciting. And, it was just fun. It was good. Like the Grinch's heart grows bigger. It's something like that.
Yeah.
That faith again. Yeah.
My story is not dissimilar to yours. And as I was walking, I did a different route. I walked the Portuguese Camino Portuguese. And, between the cobblestones that were tearing up my feet, that pack that seemed like it had 12 pianos and an anvil in it. I did it solo. So, you come in and out of groups, but you take time to sort of be alone when you want to be alone. And then to arrive at the cathedral, my family was there waiting for me, and I kind of fell into my family, fell into my faith. And that was just such an incredible moment for me. Like you were outlining, some of the veterans go back and walk multiple Caminos, either with the organization or on their own. I'm wondering if there are servicemen and women, their parents, their wives, brothers, sisters that are listening to the podcast today who are interested in connecting to the organization for the benefit of their servicemen or women. How should they get in touch with you, Father Steve? How should they reach out to Jim and Dr. Renee and the organization?
The easiest way to do that would be to go to the website, warriorsontheway.org. There they can find out information about the general information about the website, and it also has our contact information, which is our email address, which is also very simple, warriorsontheway@gmail.com. So they can send us a direct message. I do encourage everybody to go and look at the website first, just so that they can get the initial background and have an idea how we're structured. But they can send us a message directly. There's also an actual physical address there for those people who still know how to write letters. We will occasionally get a nice card or letter in the mail, people inquiring that way. But the website and email will get a person straight to us. And then this is my full-time deal as far as keeping everything going during the year, and then bringing in the wonderful team as we start preparing for the iteration, and then as we're bringing it to a close after everybody's gone home. So I'm the initial point of contact, and then, as has happened from time to time, somebody will have a question for somebody particular, and if it's not me, then I just forward that along and make the connection that way. So, and I do want to say the team that we have is wonderful, because everybody takes their time and gives it to the organization, takes their skills, gives it to the organization, and without any expectation of compensation or stipend or anything else. If as an organization we had to pay for the talent that had come in just because they've caught the vision for this mission, we couldn't exist. And so I say that for a variety of reasons. One, I like giving my team credit where credit is due, and they're due a lot of credit. And two, you've been kind enough to mention the opportunity to support us. And I want people to realize that other than maintaining the website and postage for sending out donation receipts, everything that comes in goes straight into true, real pilgrimage expenses, like have been discussed, as far as the transportation and equipment and all that.
You'll find warriorsontheway.org link below in your show notes, so you can just grab it right here out of your podcast app. Click, you send more information for the group. You'll also find the support page where you can make a contribution via PayPal, via credit card, or the good old-fashioned U.S. Postal Service will be happy to take your contribution to help support servicemen and women walking on the Camino de Santiago. Group, when is the next Camino walk for Warriors on the Way?
It's going to be this September, and we try to focus in on September. The weather is pretty good, and the big summer surge is starting to shrink a little bit. So there's a little more space, a little less competition for both beds and just space on the Camino itself. But that brings a question. You said you mentioned your early multiple pilgrimages, but you start on the Portuguese. When do you have yours next trip scheduled? Where are you going?
Yeah, I actually just got a booster shot the other day. We were talking offline about it, but I'm headed to Italy to finish my Via Francigena walk through Italy to Rome. And just like with the Caminos and such, my family's going to meet me there at the Vatican. And I'm just really looking forward to that. So thanks for asking, Father Steve. It's, I'm sure, just like you find with your veterans, that there are certain people who this becomes a great passion for them, and to be able to, to really slow down to your own pace physically, to find the space where life becomes so simple, right? You wake up, you eat, you walk, you sleep, pray. It is a very simple life, and the life of a pilgrim, especially in this day and age, everything in our world is so complicated. That opportunity, whether it be the Camino de Santiago or any number of pilgrimage routes, it's a great, great opportunity for many. Are you booked up? I presume your whole team is set up for 2022. Are you starting to look for 2023 veterans who are interested in making that walk?
We are full for this year. We've got a great group put together for this year, and we are. I mean, in the big picture, we are getting ready for 2023, but we don't actually open the application season until the 15th of October. That gives a chance for everybody to get home, resettled, do the basic maintenance, either repair or replace anything that was damaged, and know that 2022 is closed out. And then after that, we actually start taking applications. So anybody that wants to make an application, recommend that they just put a reminder on their calendar for the 15th to send us a message, and and that'll start the process.
It strikes me as people are looking forward to maybe joining Warriors on the Way in a future walk and hearing, frankly, the incredible benefit that comes about from it. There's just this great synergy between Dr. Phillips and Father Steve and Jim. You know what you bring to the organization. I don't know if that was by design, Father Steve, or how did you go about constructing this experience so that servicemen and women receive the greatest impact from walking the Camino?
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that question. Having a psychologist on the team was part of the design from the very beginning, and I'm a firm believer that faith and behavioral health or mental health, whatever you want to call it, are best when partnered, because there are certain issues that are better answered with a faith answer, and there are some questions and concerns that are better answered with a behavioral health answer. And the reality is there are people within my profession that don't trust behavioral health. There's people within behavioral health that don't trust my profession. So a little bit of equal blame can be spread around if we wanted to do that. But instead, as Dr. Phillips mentioned, Dr. Landry was on the first iteration. Dr. Phillips has been on the 2 iterations since then. And we make it a point of, from the very first introduction dinner when everybody's arrived in San Antonio, to literally stand side by side and say, we're here together, so that regardless of what your concern is it more PTSD, which is typically best served on the behavioral health side? Is it more moral injury, which is typically best addressed from the faith side? That we're here, and you're going to get as complete an answer as we can provide for you. And then the team expanded to including Jim, because the reality is when we're going and we're working and doing what we do, there's a lot of moving pieces, and Jim has come in and make sure that we hit all of our hard times when we need to hit them. And then at the same time, he's got the shared background. So he works as a peer to those that are walking. So regardless of where the comfort point is for the individual veteran pilgrim, there's somebody to within the leadership team that is approachable, that can provide some answers, and occasionally say, actually, this is what I think, and you may want to also get the perspective from and whoever is best suited. But I'll leave the opportunity for others to chime in on that. But that's it. Yes, it's most definitely an intentional design of the program.
Sergeant Espinosa, we were talking offline, and you said that the structure of Warriors on the Way was really impactful for you as you were walking. Some days you might be more inclined to speak to one. I don't want to introduce dichotomies here, but to spend more time with Dr. Phillips or more time with Father Steve.
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of everything. I was conflicted for many reasons: moral injury and PTSD. So it's not more about why things happen. I mean, things happen, but what can I do moving forward, or how can I understand what is going on in my brain? So I'll sit down, or not sit, but walk and talk with Dr. May and get her insight of, what could be this that's going on in my head? What am I feeling? Or it's just a better understanding of what's going on with me personally, from the medical standpoint. Now, my moral side wants to go talk to Father Rendall. And then if I wanted to have a good joke, I'd go talk to Jim. No, I kid. But, we did have a lot of fun. It wasn't always business. It's like Jim said, we needed, to joke around. In the military, we make jokes. We joke about things that are inappropriate at times, but that's how we get through our daily life.
Yeah,
serving under the stressful conditions that we have. But when I wanted to know more about being in a serious manner, I would talk to either Dr. May or Father Rendall.
Thank you all very much for being on the podcast today. Warriors on the Way is a group dedicated to healing for servicemen and women, spiritual healing, emotional healing, psychological healing by walking the Camino de Santiago. You can support this organization, a 501c3 in the United States, by going to warriorsontheway.org. You can donate there, or if you know someone who would benefit from walking the Camino de Santiago, please get in touch with Father Steve, Dr. Renee, Jim Stinson, or anyone who is taking these walks with Warriors on the Way. Everyone, thank you so much for being with me today. I am so grateful for what you're doing for our servicemen and women. I would say to all of you, just be well and stay safe and buen camino.
Thanks for having us.
This has been the Sacred Steps Podcast. To help other pilgrims find the show, please leave a star rating on your podcast app. For episode notes, links from the show, or to contact Kevin, visit our website at sacredstepspodcast.com. You can also join our Behind the Mic email list on the website. Before you go, tap subscribe so our future episodes are available to you automatically.